This is the really annoying part. People call me a political lesbianism.
I call you the political lesbian. It's just the idea. You are the idea incarnate.
I mean, they kind of do.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
We are fucking flashbanged by fucking...
Abigail Schreier, yes. I am Emma. I'm the flashbanger. I am.
No, you really are. You flashed us and you banged us. It was really rude, honestly.
It was really rude. I'm sorry.
You caught us off guard there.
I'm Talia Bhatt, the Indian woman who had to sit there and just kind of listen to Emma tell me about this suburban conservative white chick being transition is just like when monolid.
And I'm Lucy Kartikasari, detrans, pro-trans, and very pro-chaos, so I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. So why the fuck are we here, Emma? Tell everyone.
Okay, so the companion book for Patreon is actually a really obscure book. It was actually hard to find without paying for it. And it's called Detransition, Beyond, Before, and After by Max Robinson. In all likelihood, the listener has never heard of either this author or this book. It came out in 2021. It is a book by a detrans lesbian. And at first, my rationale at first was Schreier's book is often called a detrans book. And, it's part of the whole compulsory detransition thing of GCs, right? So it's not completely unreasonable, but also at the same time, Schreier is not detrans. It is not until the penultimate chapter that detransition is even really mentioned. It's like it is and it isn't a detrans book, right? She doesn't have too high of an opinion of detrans people in reality. So why stop at shitty opinions of outsiders? Let's do the shitty opinions inside the community. But then this book actually retreads a lot of Abigail's points because it came out in 2021. Here's the thing. The reason why no one has heard of this book is because it is a TERF book. Not like TERF in terms of hates trans people, but trans exclusionary radical feminism. An attempt at a feminism is being made here, earnestly. Well, as earnest as it can be in this instance, but so by 2021, post-release of Schreier's book, post-embracing of detransition by the natalist movement, the story of a feminist refusal of transition and the story of the detrans lesbian is rapidly losing relevance. Because now it's about reclaiming the wombs. And lesbians, as we all know, do not possess the wombs. Not functional ones, anyway. So yeah, that's basically why. However, this is an important book, mainly for historical reasons, because Max Robinson was part of a political detransition TERF cult, which is largely responsible by their own admission for forging such strong ties between detransitioners and GCs. They have, I am reasonably sure, coined the term desister, which for those who don't know, desist refers to stopping to identify as trans. And if you're listening to that, is why does it sound like you defected from a military? That's why, because they made it. Yeah, so basically, while this book was released at a time where their perspectives were no longer relevant and fully co-opted by the GC movement, and they were discarded and forgotten. Nevertheless, these are the people for whose sins I pay today. And if I am ever in this episode a little more insulting in my framing than usual, that's probably why.
So Lucy, did you know about the political detrans TERF cult, or...?
This is news to me, honestly. Because the reason why I got involved with content creation relating to detransition to begin with was because of Ollie London. That was my 9/11. I had never heard of this. I didn't even know where the term desister came from. So this is also news to me.
Another important thing to note about them is that they ran a crypto TERF campaign on Tumblr. for mainly transmasculine people, targeting them.
So to be clear, this is not a cryptocurrency for
No, it's
TERFs.
not.
It is somehow much shittier than
So
that.
basically, again, I am relaying their own admissions. They studied the way that transmasc people talk on Tumblr and methods of persuasion and social engineering, and rephrased their beliefs to sound like the transmasc people on Tumblr. Essentially, they learned their language and adapted their rhetoric to it and started posting it on there. They ran a massive campaign on Tumblr whose main points were transition is not achievable. You will never be a real man, basically. Like you'll never really. Basically, the pursuit of transition is folly. You were convinced into doing this because being a woman sucks, and trans women are out to get you. Those are the thesis of their campaign that they ran on like regular milquetoast accounts.
So if you listen to the main episode before you came here, remember how like dropped that little Janice Raymond foreshadowing and it didn't really pay off? That's because Jan was here the whole time, baby.
Oh yes, this book is like
Okay,
slightly Janice Raymond endorsed this book, kind of, according to the acknowledgments. Max Robinson emailed Janice Raymond, and
she said yeah whatever in an email.
Yeah, and she said like yeah, sounds nice. Janice Raymond comes up like a lot in this book, so we'll get to that.
Emma, you don't understand. I have been waiting for this moment. I'm sorry.
Okay.
The first time I read the Transsexual Empire, I think it was still 2024. I was in the middle of like writing trans rad fem, and like I read this book for the first time because I was like, so what is in here? And I found a lot of bullshit, but like a thing I couldn't talk about in the book is that what I found. I was like, hey, why does Janice Raymond sound like a modern like Tumblr trans misogynist? like she sounds like a vintage trans misogynist because she is a vintage trans misogynist. But I was like, why does the average Tumblr trans misogynist who like effectively loves speaking over trans women and has serious issues with trans women, and every time like the topic of patriarchy or misogyny comes up, pulls rank in womanhood? Like, actually, I have epistemic authority over you, tranny, because I am a real woombin and you are not a real woombin, and you will never understand the pain of being a real woman. I was like, why do all these fuckers sound like Janice? I'll be clear, this is like a common like version of transphobia. People arrived here themselves without necessarily having read Janice Raymond. Like, in Janice Raymond obviously was pulling this from something, you know? This is just kind of how trans misogyny can naturally manifest. But like, oh, we found it! We found the missing fucking link, baby! There is a straight line from the True Madness Bible to fucking Max Robinson and a political D-trans TERF alt that was running psyops on Tumblr. Holy
No,
shit!
yeah, and like to be fair,
were you expecting that kind of reveal on Patreon?
but this book post-dates the crypto turf campaigns. As far as I know, they were struggling to get this book out, and then they did, and like when they published it, this was like already past the zenith of this cult. Not to start off on the insulting foot immediately, but I can tell that these people are not in the business of writing books because this book is pretty bad, like on a technical level, regardless of what it states. So I can believe them that they were trying to make this for a long time because they're not very good at it. The thing about reading this book is that it like actually is written by a detransitioner, and due to the nature of their cult, it's kind of like it's harsh to say whether this is like a trans man that has hypnotized himself into this, or this is a detrans woman. Like, you'll never know. But for the sake of the argument, I'm just going to assume that this is a detrans lesbian. Okay, I'm just going to believe what the book says because we're never gonna get anywhere if I like go on this tangent.
Also, Lucy, I am like incredibly sorry if I sounded a little bit too gleeful there, but you have no idea what it's like to like experience all this stuff and be like, oh my god, why is there a connection to this ancient 1979 book that I know these fuckers haven't read?
No,
And then one of these, yeah.
but it's like when all the red tape on the walls comes together and you're like, aha, yeah.
Oh, that was it, wasn't it? This was my conspiracy board moment. You're right.
What struck me while reading this is with Abigail Schreier, there were times where she would like find a hole in progressive rhetoric and lash onto it, but otherwise it was like just complete mommy's tantrum. This one,
yeah,
it's worse. Like, it's worse as a book, and every single argument, almost every single argument it makes that actually pertains to the topic, that's not a quote by someone else about something else, it undermines itself in a different chapter. Like every single argument it makes the opposite argument somewhere else, literally. But because it is actually like trying to be like somewhat ideologically consistent and it's trying to do a feminism and it's trying to talk about a detrans experience, it was like weirdly more
There was some
thought provoking
Yeah.
in that way, even though it was horseshit.
I mean, we had to exercise our brains a little more. Fundamentally, it's still drawing from the same well as Janice Raymond, so there's not a lot there of substance. But it's just like, oh yeah, okay, you're trying to make a feminist argument. It's shit, but you're trying.
Yeah, so the opening of this book was quite like the whiplash for me, because it's like it talks a lot of understanding the oppression of women and the unity of women and of lesbians, and that's like, that sounds nice. But then I mean, I knew this was coming, but like, I mean, in terms of like just the experience of reading it, we arrive at what is, according to Max Robinson, a woman, and that is the shared femaleness that is being born a woman. And the entire opening of this book is the argument for why FTMs, and this is the terminology being used consistently throughout the book. It makes it read kind of vintage for something published in 2021. FTMs
in 2021,
yes.
but like this entire worldview is so fucking vintage turf. So.
Yes. So like the shared femaleness of FTMs and women. Just to read you a little bit of a passage. Naming our shared femaleness is more important to me than delineating where our neuroses diverge. Born in the wrong body, born in the right body. Either way, the body I am talking about is the type that is expected to menstruate in perfect silence.
Did this absolute crackpot just say menstruate
Yes.
that
I actually forgot about
menstruate in silence. That was the
I actually forgot about this. I think my eyes just skipped
wow.
it, and I was just like, yeah, shared womanhood, whatever. And then I opened my annotations, and I just saw menstruate in silence.
How do we all feel about menstruating in silence together?
I mean, I don't
gang,
usually yell when
to
I
celebrate
menstruate.
our shared femaleness.
I mean, I haven't had a period for 15 years, so I couldn't tell you.
I don't think I have periods, and then I have like a weird hormone crash, and I don't necessarily know if it's because I'm having like a cyclical hormone thing, or if it's because I've forgotten to take my HRT again, which happens distressingly often.
Relatable.
Yeah, so like, here's the thing. The idea that Max here is trying to do, and Max talks a lot about in this book about the social construction of gender and how women are constructed. And the entire idea of dominance feminism is to describe the hierarchy and the social construction of gender. Now, you might think that this idea is a little bit at odds with woman is when womp. And you would be right. But let's just not think about it. Anyway.
All right. So for our guests and also for our listeners who may not be like diligent followers of our work, although like if you're not, why are you listening to us on Patreon? To be totally honest. But like, should we explain what dominance feminism is? Is this a term you've come across before, Lucy?
No, I have no clue what this is. Please educate me. I haven't read a lot of theory, so I'm a layman here.
Okay, so dominance feminism is basically this theory that, like, men suffer because women are naturally dumb. No, it's not that.
Basically, the dominance feminism is the foundation of the social constructivist theory that gender is a hierarchy, which is socially instituted, that institutes male supremacy and the subjugation of women. And that man and woman as ideas, as categories, even as mentioned in this sentence, are derived from that idea. That man is the supposed beneficiary in this, and the woman is the exploited resource slice.
Okay.
So basically, every kind of thing like that is a model, which is to say, it's like an abstraction of reality which seeks to make sense of it. But within trying to explain certain aspects of it, it necessarily simplifies some others as less relevant. Right? So regardless of your opinion on trans people and whether you even know they exist, when you talk about dominance feminism and social constructivism, you necessarily put aside things like internal feelings of gender, the biology of gender sometimes.
Okay, but if you're a person who believes that gender is perception, okay, what about like stealth trans people? I don't understand
how it's transphobic. Well, a great thought. So here's the thing. When you talk about social constructivism, you necessarily walk away from biology as a deterministic factor. because it becomes biology, like
Yep.
bodies become, in this discussion, a site of social exploitation. And what their function is and what the nature of the bodies is a feature of it, but not of the higher. So what do you do with this?
Yeah, no, you notice that exactly right because the social constructivists were smart about it, right? They're perfectly aware that you can be exploited as a woman even if you don't have the womb. Just because you're an infertile cis woman, suppose, if you're talking about an infertile cis woman, she cannot be reproductively exploited. Does that mean that she is exempt from patriarchy? Does that mean she doesn't experience misogyny? Does that mean that she now has a social positionality above that of other women? No, of course not. That's absurd. She is she is still treated like a woman, and because the model of womanhood revolves around reproductive exploitation, her inability to perform that role actually exacerbates the oppression she faces. And as you fairly astutely noted, this leads very naturally into a materialist radical feminist theory of trans misogyny. This is my life's work, by the way.
Yeah, so like trans people are the ultimate proof of social constructivist theory, and detrans people for that matter, because the
Yeah, but there was a
the
problem.
destiny of the birth sex can be overwritten, and your treatment in society can entirely change because you willed it so, because you gamed the system.
Yeah.
But how do you reconcile it if you
But
don't want to do that?
but
Cognitive dissonance. That's how you reconcile
yeah, because
it.
but that's exactly the thing, right? Because that was the bloody problem. Even the social constructivist, even the gals who had their heads on straight for the most part. They kind of looked at trannies and they were like, ew. And even though they were the pioneering social constructivists who came up with these theories, they were really grossed out by trannies. You have to understand. You have to understand how grossed out they were. So instead of embracing the trans woman as quite frankly the ultimate vindication of dominance feminism, they were like, ew. And that's the story of second wave feminism, everybody.
And Max obviously post dates the second wave, but like decades, like 40 of
But
40 years.
well, chronologically, yes, but mentally and emotionally. The book that we're about to talk about, it is an unofficial sequel to Transsexual Empire.
It is.
I know Jan probably wasn't impressed with it. Maybe, she probably just said in the email or whatever, but it is an unofficial sequel to Transsexual Empire, straight up.
Yeah. And here is how you attempt to marry the idea of the social constructivism of sex and gender with trans people bad. You define the idea of what man and woman is through birth sex, and simply if born woman then woman, if born man then man, and yes, I know that these things are socially constructed, but just trust me, bro, you can't change them. Why can't you change them? It's simply juxtaposes this rhetoric of oh, social constructivism, this happens, that happens, blah, 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 blah. And then it's well, born with womb, if born with womb, then this, and if born with PP, then you are will never shake the idea that you have to exploit women. The end. And that's kind of it. And so the beginning of this book is just protracted letter to trans men, I'm sorry, FTMs, to seek solidarity with women, and we are stronger together, and we all have wombs, and we have shared solidarity as womben. They don't actually use the term womben or women with a Y or any of that. They just say women.
No, but we're going to.
But we're going
because,
to.
This is slop. This is condescending slop anyway, so you might as well be honest about it. Honestly, Max Robinson is a lot like if I had been born female and then was kicked repeatedly in the head by a horse.
So there isn't a lot of attempts to reconciliation, right? Max says, I am entitled to describe my world as I see it, and I respect your right to do the same. We are all entitled to our own understanding of the cultural moments we live in. We don't have to agree, but we don't necessarily have to disagree either. And the whole chapter is kind of like this.
That means nothing.
Yeah, but Max is basically agree to disagree. I think you're a woman, and we should have solidarity, but just listen to me. I'm not mean to you, I swear.
No, because okay, so they desperate. Fucking hell! What pronouns are we using?
I assume she her because says detrans, lesbian, and woman. So obviously she's not.
Woman, therefore she.
Okay,
her.
you know what, Max Robinson? If you have a fucking problem with the pronouns I'm using for you, email me about it. Fuck off. Anyway, so the thing about Max is that they really, really want to be able to solve this schism. You can tell that they really want to reconcile the cultural and the dominance feminism sides of the second wave, they want to come along and be the savior that the second wave never had. And they don't have the sauce. That's the problem. And they can't recognize that they don't have the sauce. They think they have the sauce, but they're like, I can resolve the contradiction between woman is when womb and also dominance feminism, and they can't, and they don't even try.
I remember when I said that this book contradicts itself all the time. So here is a very good example of them attempting to reconcile dominance feminism with this and how it manifests. So X goes on this thing of choice feminism is bad. The liberal feminist idea that you can simply choose your if simply women CEOs, then all is well. And that's fine.
What?
And they say that empowering is supposed to mean giving the tools to recontextualize reality and fight better.
This is 2021. I think even Hillary Clinton was over the word empower by this point.
Yeah, again, I've said this is really this is really vintage. When women CEOs, no more misogyny is kind of cringe. This is old news by 2021. But Max says it no, but now we understand empowerment is simply feeling better. Transition was not empowering. It did not give me tools to understand my situation better. It was simply a choice. But okay, so what is Max's proposed solution? Choice feminism is bad. Woman CEO does not solve misogyny. Transition is not empowering. What do? Quote, what would a completely free choice look like? Would it require a complete isolation from all surrounding influences? This is impossible. Each of us acts within her life's context, constrained by some elements and enabled by others. To position being free from outside influences, our highest aspiration encourages an individualist sense of empowerment that does not face the reality of the full context of our lives or living under patriarchy. Not too bad so far. What do? Instead,
Sure.
we can strive for liberatory choices. Okay, Max wrote.
Huh?
Wait, hold on, but that's wait. Huh?
I am the Joker.
We can't.
I am the Joker. You wrote 2 chapters about how choice feminism is bad and you can't choose your way out of patriarchy. And then you're like, what do? We make better choices. Are you convinced? Are you convinced yet?
But that was one sentence to the next. It's in the thing. It is choice. It's there. It's in the name. I'm sorry. What the fuck? What the actual fuck? I'm sorry.
Remember when I told you this book is shit?
Okay, yeah. But
remember when I said Max Robinson is me if I was kicked in the head by a horse?
You were right.
Yeah.
How do you do this? Don't you? Did Max just sit at a keyboard and then mash her face into the keyboard and was like, that's a book, and then just didn't bother to proofread it or anything? Because that is exactly what this sounds like.
Yeah, she definitely didn't have an editor, right?
Yeah,
I think we can all agree on that. I really doubt there was much of an editing staff.
No, this isn't really a defense, but more of a theory that at this point, Max has been in a cult for I think a decade. So I don't think that the contradiction detecting machine in the head is working particularly well. And then obviously the conclusion: transition, not liberatory choice; detransition, liberatory choice. And that is literally what she says. Quote, when I transitioned, I didn't perceive that I had a choice. I believed that to postpone or to stop my transition would have meant my total annihilation. Later, when the detransitioned women I sought out shared the frameworks they had developed with me, I began to see stopping my transition as an actual option for the first time, a real choice for myself. Gradually, I came to understand my detransition as a liberatory choice. I had experienced my transition as a form of resistance, but in reality, it only affirmed the same stereotypes that had done me harm to begin with. So, okay, I believed that transition was my liberatory choice, but it wasn't, and now I feel like transition is a liberatory choice. So, therefore it is. Well, I don't know, Max. Your argument is that you felt like it was a liberatory choice both times. So why should I trust you the second time if the first time was wrong?
I think that Max has just invented a new Olympic sport of moving goalposts for the category of liberatory choice. Just it's How? Like, it's just a line in the sand that we
It's
just,
not
like,
even
erase and,
moving.
like, move it around again?
It's just sprinting with the goalpost at this point, right? Like it's the Olympic sport is you pick up the goalpost and you sprint with it as far as you can.
Yeah, and Max alleges that, like, if we collectively make liberatory choices, which in Max's perspective as, like, a gender nonconforming detrans lesbian, is liberatory choice is when I wear a baseball cap and a flannel. And a not liberatory choice is when I take
My
tea.
God.
Why? Because. Well, okay, there is actually a
Okay,
reason
Emma,
why.
you know what the problem is? I have to say intelligent things now because like I'm noticing things about like both Sarah Hoagland and Janice Raymond that are appearing in this text. But like I'll
Oh,
let you
yeah,
finish
yeah,
and then
yeah.
I have to
yeah.
unfortunately say intelligent things about this
So,
book.
like, Max says that taking testosterone and, like, removing a breast is imitating men as opposed to wearing men's clothes as a woman. Now, an astute listener with knowledge of the sex wars might notice that the same rationale was applied to say that butch lesbians were not really women and did not belong in feminist spaces because in their gender presentation they were imitating men. Now, why is taking tea imitating men but wearing baseball caps isn't? I don't know.
Especially because, oh God, we're getting so inside baseball. Especially because during the lesbian sex wars, when like the TERFs like completely lost their mind, and after like shitting on trannies, they decided to move on to like butch lesbians. They were like the butches at the time weren't even, or like they weren't talking about the butches who were taking testosterone because like there were butches taking testosterone. They were literally talking about the butches who had the backwards baseball cap on, and they were like, if backwards baseball cap, then man. And like okay, so Max Robinson, venerator of this period of feminism, inheritor of Janice Raymond's legacy. Why is your backwards baseball cap not making you a man? Because Janice Raymond would say your backwards baseball cap makes you a man. Janice Raymond would say that to you straight up. Lucy must be so confused. I'm so sorry.
I am
I'll try
confused
to
but
explain some of
entertained.
this in a second.
Well, good.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, that's what we're going for.
You are right. Because, like, Janice Raymond, like, especially in this section of the book, there was, like, the middle where Janice Raymond is cited less. But in this part of the book where we're talking about liberatory choices, Janice Raymond is cited, like, every third page. Like, I don't know what it is in print because I read it on my phone, but, like, it's, like, every third page or so. Janice Raymond said this, Janice Raymond said that. It's, like, again and again and again and again. And occasionally there is Mary
Mhm.
Daly, and occasionally there is Sarah Hoagland, who apparently helped with this book, according to the acknowledgments, who wrote something about liberating yourself from within with lesbian ethics.
Okay, so gather around,
Okay.
children. I'm gonna have to like teach you more fucking like second wave history abridged or whatever. Okay, so Janice Raymond, you don't need a lot of explanation over there. Okay, her big thing was like trans people were an invention of like the pharmaceutical industry. It was this big conspiracy. She noted, by the way, Janice Raymond noticed and wrote down in her book that like doctors and pharmaceutical reps or like whoever the clinicians in charge of transition care, they're turning away trans people. She noticed that, and then she still said that trans people were invented by the pharmaceutical industry to sell more drugs. So that's the kind of intellectual giant we're dealing with. Janice Raymond is also an ex-Catholic, like a lot of these fucking cultural feminists were. Just she's the fucking worst. I call her Sister Raymond for a reason. So Janice Raymond's like influence on this book is like pretty clear, right? So if you really peel back all of this birth sex stuff, what you find under it is like a very Catholic ontology. You were made in God's image, and any tampering with his design is zabad. Um, Now, because Janice Raymond used to be a nun and she left the nunnery because they wouldn't let her be a lesbian, which is like total hypocrisy, by the way. Everyone knows that, like, sure, you weren't supposed to say it out loud, but like that is where all the lesbians went. So, like, come on. But anyway, she left the nunnery just because they didn't allow her to be a lesbian openly. But the thing is, she never gave up on Catholic beliefs. So, like, the entirety of transsexual empire is her just basically like avoiding saying things like God's design. But if you can read between the lines, you're like, Janice, you're just saying that like it's a sin to tamper with God's design. So that's where the entire like sex ontology things comes from. And that has obviously been ported into Max Robinson's book. But who is Sarah
Uh,
Hoagland? What is lesbian ethics? Those are great questions. Emma, do you know? Was I able to explain this to you?
I forgot.
Okay, Lucy, are you ready to learn how lesbian ethics is right for you?
I don't know what a lesbian ethic is, but I'm willing to learn about it.
Okay, perfect. So, Sarah Hoagland wrote this book in 1990 called Lesbian Ethics, in which she was critiquing the individualism and like the sort of like choice feminist tendencies that were emerging in the feminist movement at the time. Now, 1990s around where radical feminism gave way to liberal feminism. And, so Sarah Hoagland was kind of like commenting on a very real trend, I guess she was the original choice femme critic in some way. And she was a political lesbian. She was like a polylesb type who was like, believe in this very doomed idea of political lesbianism. In her book Lesbian Ethics, she wrote that feminism was getting too individualist and too focused on women's choices. So therefore, what we needed to do in order to fix feminism and patriarchy and save everyone is that we needed to make better choices.
Excuse me?
Wait. You didn't tell me that
No,
Max Robinson just copied
Lucy,
the homework from Sarah Hoagland.
Yeah, no, Lucy, this is happening again. So Sarah Hoagland was like, we need to make better choices and we need to stop like we need to stop like, being so as bitchy to each other as women, and we need to like stop like internalizing our inferiority. And also, we didn't really give that whole like, let's go out to a lesbian commune and live away. We didn't really give that a serious, can we give that a serious go? Can we all go live on lesbian communes? Let's make better choices, everyone. Come live with me on my lesbian communism and we'll fix patriarchy that way. Because that's the thing, Emma. You didn't actually read me this entire book. You said that to me and I was like, oh my god, Max Robinson just literally just rewrote Lesbian Ethics. Or Sarah Hoagland just rewrote Lesbian Ethics because apparently she only had one book in her. So when she was working with Max Robinson, she was like, you know what you should do? You should rewrite Lesbian Ethics.
Just from a detrans perspective.
I think Sarah Hoagland might be like, man, I haven't even considered this option. Let's retread my shit again. Maybe this time it'll stick.
But it makes a perverse kind of sense, right? Lesbian ethics for the FTM right now. But that's basically what these yahoos are trying to do. They're being like, you poor FTM, you are just a lost lesbian. Please return to lesbianism. Come join us on the commune where we'll make better choices. So, Lucy, would you like to join a bunch of ex-Catholics who believe in, like, womb magic? Would you like to join them on a lesbian commune to fix patriarchy? Is lesbian ethics right for you?
I think I'm just gonna make like Usain Bolt and run the other way. Beat Max at the Olympics. No.
Yeah, you can have your own goalpost.
Jesus. Yeah. Bye. My God.
But what about your lost lesbian potential, Lucy? What about the womb? Think of the womb. Think about making better choices for the womb.
On the womb commune. No, I don't think I want to join the womb commune.
If this is the really annoying part. People call me a political lesbianism.
I call you the political lesbian. It's just the idea. You are the idea incarnate.
I mean, they kind of do. And it's so frustrating because, like, I know how fucking stupid these people were. You think I like these people?
Yeah, so
whatever.
basically, Max Robinson says that we need to wear baseball caps, and that will solve patriarchy. I am, like, paraphrasing it deliberately in a stupid way, but that is what she's saying. And, as someone somewhat interested in queer history, I can't help but notice that gender non-conforming women have existed since the dawn of time. And for some reason, the patriarchy has not crumbled yet. And so I am led to the conclusion that perhaps liberatory choices are somewhat insufficient in solving the patriarchy. And I don't know where Max has hallucinated a solution here.
Flappers didn't flap hard enough. That's the thing.
And then, there's this whole thing here about how transitioning to FTM to be a trans man reduces your capacity to participate in feminism. And for a while, I was kind of confused because it didn't reduce my capacity to do it. It didn't reduce my capacity to be an ally to women. I wouldn't say that since the day I learned what feminism is, I would have ever been at a point in my life when I was like, no, that's wrong or cringe. Like, never. Throughout my transition, detransition, whatever. So I was really confused by this statement because I didn't feel like my transition impeded my ability to, like, politically organize.
I'm going to be so disappointing, though. I mentioned off air that I think it was off air, that I had essentially lived for a portion of my life as close as possible as I could be to a cishet white dude by living stealth as a trans man in Indonesia as a half European. There was a time where I actually did think that feminism was cringe. So I can actually see this point of like, well, if you do grow up as a man and you are divorced from like seeing the actual sexism that women go through and you do not want to open your eyes to it, there is an off chance that this would happen. But I think that someone grabbing you by the shoulders and being like, "Dude, you don't get it," it took actually forming good friendships for me to realize. I'm unfortunately, much like a cishet man in that regard, that I actually had to have an aha moment of like, damn, women do have it hard. I'm just
Okay,
being
that
real. Like
was
this
like
happened to me.
incredibly
I'm
honest.
not proud of
Yeah,
it.
that was incredibly it was incredibly honest and vulnerable of you, and unfortunately, it like totally puts a kibosh on the question I was about to ask sarcastically, where I was about to thump the table and be like, "So, ladies, when the testosterone coursed through your veins, did you feel the misogyny rising within you?" And then you kind of said, "Well, yeah, actually."
Actually, yeah, no, I did feel that misogyny.
Oops. Oh shit.
We're about to actually touch on this, and this is like one
Okay.
of the bits where actually like I said, a lot of the times where Mac's book is like so close and yet so far. So like again,
Mhm.
as you said, like yeah, socializing as a man does reward you for misogyny in a way that it simply doesn't if you live as a woman, right?
Wow. I wonder if anyone on this podcast currently has ever made that point and then been called a fucking turf for it. Actually, a turf is saying this right now, so maybe I should. Ah, fuck. I didn't think that through.
Hold
Fuck.
on, hold on. Max actually isn't saying that.
Oh,
Max has not said in this
Oh shit.
book,
Okay.
unless I'm massively forgetting. Max has
Okay.
not
Okay.
said in this book that living as a man rewards you for doing misogyny, and that's why a trans man might have less solidarity with women.
That was too intelligent for him. I should have known. Damn. Okay, never mind. That's still all. That's all us. Never
Yes,
mind. Okay, sorry. Cancel
but
mob.
but
Cancel
but
mob.
but
Your
but but
turf
but
is down.
but
All right.
just like cis men are not locked into an eternal destiny of being enemies of women, and they are capable of politically organizing for
Mm-hmm.
women and have done so in much smaller numbers than women, but they are nonetheless capable of it. Even while being completely cis and even while being completely heterosexual, this is possible because they are human beings. So I was like, what gives? Why? Why? Like, what is the reasoning that transitioning inherently breaks your solidarity with women just by itself? And then and this is said in this book twice, by the way, so this is
Interesting.
not an off chance. I arrive at this quote. I was frustrated that feminists weren't responding to what I believed, pre detransition, that as an FTM, my suffering mattered more than women's, and certainly mattered more than lesbians.
Okay, run that back. What?
That as an FTM, my suffering mattered more than women's and certainly mattered more than lesbians. And she says this again at greater length. I can't be fucked to find it right now, but like there is a quote where she goes like, as FTMs, we of course believe that our suffering is more important than women's and our problems should be listened to first. And I'm like,
I was too fucking nice when I was using they them pronouns.
so when I said that Max doesn't say that it is the experience of being socialized as a man and the rewards that misogyny gives you that can break your solidarity with women, potentially. No, because Max is fundamentally basing belonging to a sex category on sex characteristics, it is meant literally. You have cut off your femaleness and you believe that you no longer have anything in common with women and you believe yourself more important than women. Why? Because I did. That's it. That's the reason.
Any comments, Lucy?
So Max kind of reverse engineered male entitlement for herself. That's what I'm hearing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then there's a bit where like Max is basically saying, well, as FTMs, we believe that women's suffering is less important than ours, but then we realize that people still treated us with misogyny. And womp womp, we will never escape womanhood. And it's like, okay, this is like a bad Yelp review of transition. I was like, if I transition, I will finally be more important than women. And then they were like, no. And so I detransitioned.
Okay, there's just so much to say here because like okay, so to a certain degree there is like a very speak for yourself element to this. Like I don't think this is true of all FTMs, buddy. I really don't. For one thing, but for another thing is like the really annoying thing is like you know how I was like yelling about missing links and shit
Mhm.
earlier. The really annoying thing is that when Emma like showed me these sentences for the first time, it was like something clicked into place a little bit. I was like, oh God, we've met these people. Unfortunately, Max Robinson is not the only idiot on the planet. We have met the Robinsonians, you know? And like, okay, Max Robinson was part of like a fairly successful like detrans cult that like actually fairly successfully was able to like promulgate and like proliferate a decent amount of his rhetoric on Tumblr. And I just have to say that probably wouldn't have happened if people weren't receptive to it, is the sort of like fundamental issue we have to face.
Right, because like psyops and like crypto stuff, like obviously it can lead you down a pipeline and eventually bring you to a degree of vitriol that you would not have arrived at yourself. That's true. At the same time,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter how much they mimic progressive rhetoric. Ultimately, they still have to arrive at womanhood specialness. We're all suffering together. They have it out for us, and you have to bite it. And like sometimes people are in vulnerable positions, and like what is true of a lot of detrans people is that not political detransitioners, but ones that are seeking detransition, is that they suddenly are put in a position to transition again with all the implications that it carries and social precarities that it carries, while at the same time reckoning that they're not undoing their birth sex this time. They're going against their past selves' wishes. And in a society that believes that sex should not be changed under any circumstances, that's a lot to reckon with. But there is very rarely within trans circles understanding of what that's like, let alone in cis circles. So you are essentially left without a space where you can process those feelings. And the only place where you might receive any affirmation at all are conservative spaces, and here you go. But, and like, this is why I hold compassion for detrans people with really shitty opinions. But at a certain point, no matter how much you're deep in the sauce, there is a factor of, are you willing to do hate crimes or not? And for some people, the answer is yes, and for some people, the answer is no, and that is a pretty big difference.
I don't know, man. For
Mhm.
some of the people, the hate crimes are literally just like using words in a very specific way on a very big platform, and that's honestly enough
I
damage.
count that. I count that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Max Robinson clearly did enough damage, right? So this has been a ridiculous episode so far, and like the vibe's been fairly chill. But like the sort of like sobering aspect of this is like like the detrans cult is no longer active. Like the rhetoric itself is way past its time. This book is like literally like stepping into a time machine and going like back to like 1982 or like whatever Max Robinson's return fantasy era is. But also at the same time, this bullshit, it left an impact, right? Because people still sound like this today, except they found new words. They don't they don't say like FTM womanhood moon magic. They say AFAB. Really brought the mood down there, huh?
I'm about to do it some more. Are we ready to talk
Oh
about
God.
race again? Because this book retreads.
This is
Why?
the
Are we
second
back
time
here
you've
again?
done this to
Okay,
me.
okay. So to be clear, at first when I paired these books, Irreversible Damage and this one, I was worried that they were going to be too different because they're written from quite different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
No, they make a lot of the same arguments almost
Oh
to a
God.
T. Surgery is inherently violating, which as a disabled person, I just love.
Or rather, wait,
Yeah.
Emma, I have to make this joke legally. Or like almost away from a
Oh my
T,
god.
but didn't.
Surgery is bad and natural body is good, which like as a disabled person that needed surgery I just love.
Vintage
And
Janice.
like
But yeah.
we make the same arguments about wombies and the untouched boobies and well, like, okay, we're not talking about teenage sex, we're really not.
Thank God.
And we're talking about race corrective cosmetic surgery and cosmetic surgery in general, and how trans is like that. So, Schreier's argument for why trans is like monolith, or trans is like Jewish noses. I think both Robinson and
Mhm.
Schreier are Jewish, hence the comparison. Schreier's
Oh my
argument is
God.
really shallow. It's like thing look like that, thing
Mhm.
bad. So it's really easy to dress down. Max Robinson's is also, to be honest, easy, but like it's a little different because Robinson attempts social constructivism and hits on a note that like trans people usually avoid talking about at all for fear of, I assume, not being able to argue it properly. But like Robinson's argument for why they are similar is because you wouldn't know to feel bad about a Jewish nose if you did not live in a society that taught you that it is bad to be Jewish and therefore it is bad to have Jewish features, right? And makes a similar argument for transition. Now, Max makes this argument from the foundation that trans men are women and they feel bad about their bodies because women's bodies are bad. But you can make this argument from a not trans denialist point of view. You can say that a trans man wouldn't know to want a top surgery if he didn't grow up in a society that taught him that men have flat chests and when men have boobs, that's ugly and bad. And you can't really disagree with that, right? It's not really false. If you were dropped on a desert island, you would not know which parts of your body are gendered as what. Right? Like as a child, I mean, not as an adult. And if you come from a place that like all surgery is bad and traumatic and you shouldn't do it unless you really must, then you arrive at basically arguments for never transitioning. But then Max says this, that okay, well, but we live in a society and every choice we make is informed by society. Now what? Like I am still supposed to live in a society that hates me, so what do I do? Why surgery bad? And Max says that it's about solidarity. That if a Jewish woman has, well, first of all, she says that a lot of them are forced to do it. And like with in regards to transness, that's nonsense. Trans people are just not forced to have trans surgeries. It's not true, not real. Go outside. But then she points to like a study in the Netherlands. Hello, Lucy. That women like doing stuff like liposuctions to appear less fat, doing rhinoplasties makes women that have those features feel worse because they are more alone. And Max says transition is like that. And if you take the fundamental position that trans men are women, then I suppose that could make sense, but we're not going to argue from first principles here, so I'm just not going to take that. Here is the problem here. If you're like if you're a Jewish woman with a Jewish nose, you can go be among Jewish women and be like, we affirm each other and we are beautiful and blah, 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 blah. The concept of gender is not like that. And the gendering of physical characteristics is not like that. While there is a degree of support within trans circles, what a lot of trans people really need is to be taken as the gender that they say they are without compromise and without suggestion that they are less than cis people. And outside of your local trans friends, sometimes not even then, it just doesn't happen. There is nowhere on the planet where you can just be man with boobs and be totally equal with all other men. This doesn't happen. This doesn't exist. The gendering of body characteristics is too pervasive. You cannot individual choice your way out of that matter. Not only that, you're placing the onus on elevating variant bodies out of oppression, if I may put it that way, on the people that are most disadvantaged by it, without asking anything of, for example, cis men. You're not asking cis men to get boob jobs to support trans men, so don't ask trans men to not get top surgeries to support trans men.
Wait, that's sick, though. We should do that. Cis men go get boob jobs.
Hell yeah. So, one thing that was not brought up in the previous episode, or podcast, whatever, the accompanying one, was the whole, I hate comparisons between race and gender because there's one key factor between the two that differentiates them, thus so that it just breaks down for me. And that is the fact that ethnicity and race are hereditary traits and gender is not. You can be among not even just like women with Jewish noses, but you could be among Jewish men who also have Jewish noses. You can be surrounded by people of all gender expressions who have monolids. I really dislike it when writers make this comparison. It's unnecessary, and if you scrutinize it just a little bit, I can't become more white than I am because I just so happen to have a European dad. I can't become more Asian than I am. I'm just a perfect 50-50 split. It's just like that was passed down for me, just like my mom's language was passed down to me,
You just made the exact same argument that I made in Trans Radfem, and I think you did with the snap of a finger. Like that's perfect. Race is a heritage, or at the very least, it is supposed to indicate a heritage, right? It's supposed to stand in for something. Like okay, it's not always perfect because you could be Asian in the United States and you could be like a sixth generation American or something, right? You could not actually have any cultural ties to Vietnam because that's just kind of how like immigrants and settler projects tend to be. However, your race is still a social technology that indicates that you are supposed to be sorted with a particular heritage. You are supposed to have a specific relationship to the white nation of either first-class citizenship or otherness. And yeah, it is hereditary. It is passed down. It is temporal. It is not just, it's not quite as like, about your current place, your role, the gendered labor that you're supposed to do in the here and now. Like gender is more about like, what can be extracted from your bodily configuration, and race is a lot more about like your relationship to like the state and like the national project itself. And yeah, it's just they're just not comparable.
Yeah, and like also just to be a little bit empirical about it, we have empirical evidence that
Yes.
people can transition genders, but cannot transition races. You can look like a woman, talk like a woman, be named like a woman, walk like a woman, and people will treat you like a woman, even if you were born male. Like there are caveats to this because of how gender is, how sex and birth sex is enforced, but that does happen, and you simply cannot scrub your culture from your head. It's not how it works.
How do I transition out of generational poverty? How do I transition out of 250, 300 years of imperialism on my nation? How do I transition out of the British like famined my people so hard that we have a genetic history of diabetes? How do I transition out of history?
This is where Max's argument starts to fall apart, because Max needs to make statements that are observably false. And this is like, besides the fact that Max is a shit writer, also like attempt at a sincere feminism makes her book worse than Schreier's, because Schreier has no obligation towards consistency, but Max is.
Right.
So in order to so what's the argument? Why transition if social gender and like shifting self-identification and gender fluidity do not exist as such? Why? Well, Max makes the argument that has historical continuity with like cosmetic surgery and medical procedures forced on lesbians and intersex women. An astute listener, or frankly a listener that's half awake, might notice that all the procedures that women are usually forced to do, even including the ones that have something to do with race, are feminizing.
Yeah, now we do have to be clear over here that like what the standards of femininity are can
Yeah.
change, but like there are some constants. Like for example, the eroticization of breasts
Mm-hmm.
has been pretty consistent.
Yeah, and Max just says that those things are the same. Why? Well, because it's the patriarchal project to make women hate themselves. And I just like, listen, I'm like a callous child of the ruins of communism, and I just don't abide this kind of sentimentality. No, it isn't. Patriarchy doesn't care if women hate themselves, it just needs women to make the baby. It doesn't matter if they like it, doesn't matter if they hate it, like... Who gives a shit?
We're coming back to like internal gender sense versus like the actual like materiality of existing as a particular sex in a patriarchal society, because it's like you know what, patriarchy doesn't like make you hate yourself. Like you can probably internalize a lot of like feelings of inferiority and begin to like resent aspects both of your existence as a woman and your embodiment as a woman, because you live in a world that like dehumanizes you so utterly, that hates you, that reviles you, that makes you feel inferior. But like that's something that's kind of a byproduct. Insofar as like patriarchy can be anthropomorphized and ascribed to have an intent, patriarchy doesn't give a shit. What patriarchy cares is that if you have a wound, you use it to further patrilineality, to reproduce workers, to like produce more citizens for the nation. That's the bloody point. How you feel about it doesn't really enter, and that's dehumanizing as hell.
Yeah.
But like it doesn't fundamentally matter.
So this is like again one of those things where it's like sometimes when Max talks about shit, it's like so close and yet so far. Because my experience with like, for the listeners that like maybe haven't read my essays, my experience with like conceptualizing myself as a trans man initially was that I was an outcast and like a child lesbian, and I was like both brutified by the people around me and like kind of masculine, and I sought affirmation in that because I was both like derided for expressing masculinity and sort of put back in my place with like, but you're weaker than men though, but you have boobs though, and stuff like that. And this is the experience that probably a lot of lesbians might relate to, especially the gender nonconforming ones, that like your body is served to you as proof that not only are you worse and perverse, but also that any masculine characteristic you express, including attraction to women, is not genuine. Like, you may put on these funny clothes and you may make these gestures, but look at these boobs and hips though, that means that you really want to get fucked by a dude. to put it very bluntly. And I had a lot of feelings about that,
Yeah.
including that, like, well, I want, like, if you're saying that about me, I want to make those parts of me that you say don't exist real. It was basically gender dysphoria. I mean, it was a dysphoria about my gender. And I learned that that's a thing that you can take testosterone for. And if you do, that means you're a trans man. And I didn't have, like, that's strong of a feeling of belonging among fellow girls at the time. So I was like, well, I suppose yes. And then I had like at home conversion therapy about it. So, like, you know, my views about that really calcified it. But the point is, if you want to be reductive about it, it kind of is, yeah, because patriarchy. But it wasn't in the patriarchy's interests to make me want to take tea. It was the opposite. Like, yeah, there was a causal relationship, but it's insane to suggest that the patriarchy benefited from me doing that.
As a fellow detrans person, detransitional, whatever you want to call us, I remember hearing like, the argument of like, oh yeah, patriarchy makes you want to transition, but I've never seen it like deconstruct in this way of actually laid out of like, no, patriarchy would not actually want you to do this.
Right.
This was, in Max's words, our liberatory choice to get away from pain. You know?
I mean, yeah, it's a choice against it. It's a
Yeah.
choice I hate it here. And I want to express myself in the exact opposite way.
Yeah.
I hope we're close-ish to the end of the book, because where I'm going to go now, or where this point has taken us, I'm
So,
gonna have to
we're actually
talk about something dense.
technically at the beginning, but this is the second point that Max makes out of 3 that I care about. So, like, yeah, we are at the end of the book as far as anyone's concerned, because this book sucks.
One thing before I get into the meat of it, right? A thing we keep saying about how conservative people and reactionaries just ramble a lot and like repeat themselves constantly. Yeah, they're all bad writers. They're bad writers because they're bad thinkers. They don't really have like much style or verb. I'm sure you'll find the occasional conservative intellectual out there who can at least slap a sentence together. Schreier, Max Robinson, and apparently Sarah Hoagland have read her work, but it doesn't come across particularly compelling through Max's writing. And Janice Raymond, these folks are they're just bad at everything they do. And yeah, they're not really even able to fill out an entire book with their ideas. But this second deflects 3 ideas, as you said, that Max Robinson has inadvertently hit upon. Unfortunately, it makes me think about the way that like we, not just detransitioners, but like the queer and trans community as a whole, talk about cisgender and talk about non-binary.
Max actually
So I
talks
think we're
about
gonna
this.
have
So
to go there.
the funny thing is, like, actually, like, second and a half point, because the third point is just the deterioration of rhetoric in the last chapters, and the true madness,
Usually
and the
is.
true madness, because of course, and it's really funny, so I have to talk about it. But yes, so at first, in the beginning of the book, Max claims that in trans circles, being trans without pursuing surgeries is verboten. And I'm like, this was published in
What?
2021. This was the case when I was like sitting in FTM forums in 2011, and those were like Eastern European FTM forums. They were not American. So like,
Yeah.
this is what vintage nonsense is this? And you are doing Tumblr psyops. You know that's not true. That's just a lie.
My God, yeah, but that's a great point, because if you're doing Tumblr psyops on the twins, you know for an absolute fact that like you can be trans without like honestly, like you can be trans without transitioning was probably like something like the Robinsonians pushed really hard. Okay, they know that like trans communities do not make surgery mandatory. That's absurd.
Also, this is coming up on the in 2020 there was like, I don't know, resurgence of young people exploring their gender, and you had plenty of people on TikTok saying the exact same thing. Like this was everywhere.
Mhm.
This is insane.
Yeah, and then like in the one space where Max's book does not feel vintage, because that was really vintage. I was like, oh, this is like the Hudson's forums. Like, what the fuck is happening? Where she does finally mention non-binary people, and it's basically making the statement that like, well, and it's a bit more insultingly phrased than that, but I won't. It's saying that like, well, if you're saying that to be non-binary means to feel a discomfort with your assigned sex, then are you saying that women do not feel a discomfort with womanhood, like cis women? Which like, I mean, yeah, that's not a very good definition of like cis is when comfortable with gender because gender kind of sucks.
Yeah.
A lot of cis people don't really like it. Even cishet men sometimes don't like it. So it's just not a very functional definition of like you can't cis is the ideal of sex essentialism, that you are born into your sex cast and you stay there and you like it. But that's the idea of the society. Most people do not in fact like it 100% of the time.
I'm gonna tell you something so funny. Kaji Amin, who is a trans academic, transsexual man in the
Uh,
academy, I believe still partnered with Jules Kill Pearson in like sort of like one of the more tolerable academics in the academy. I'll use that word. He literally makes the exact same point in his paper, We Are All Non-Binary. So there's some stuff in here that like yeah, there's some stuff in this paper that I want to talk about, and I'm not gonna like break it down entirely because he like is in a sort of like pseudo dialogue with Judith Butler and is talking about gay history and David Valentine, and I'm just like we don't have time for another like big history lesson or anything, right? But the main thrust of his piece isn't even really about non-binary identity, but it's about cisgender identity. It is the idea that trans people, or like trans rhetoric at the very least, has sort of like fashioned a definition out of cis and cisgender that is just simply not reflective of reality, that is completely unworkable. We, as a trans community, wanted to argue for our legibility through the visibility, the necessity of transitioning. However, he says in order to do that, we had to invent cisgender. We had to invent this pure category of person who was totally comfortable with gender, who wasn't just like someone who like didn't want transition, whatever shape that transition means, who was okay with not like transitioning about it, but straight up cisgender definitionally became person who is cool with their gender, who is comfortable with it, who is totally rocking and vibing with their gender. And much like Max Robinson, I guess the one astute point made in this book highlights that's not really a real thing. 'Cause even men feel inadequate constantly. Even men have an impossible ideal of manhood to strive to, that they can fail and do fail constantly and are punished like I've seen male social bonding rituals up close. They are largely about punishing the faggiest, most effeminate, most woman-like person in the group. It's not pleasant. We are all constantly policing each other's gender. This idea of being comfortable in gender is ludicrous because gender is itself a social policing mechanism. We are not the idea of being totally cool with all of these expectations, with all of these restrictions, with all of these like mandates. It's absurd. But
I
that still doesn't fucking mean that trans people don't exist.
I don't think that cis and trans are actually helpful by themselves because I talk about this
Mhm,
a lot on my own TikTok. The whole
mhm,
idea is that it just creates a new binary where detrans people don't fit in
mhm.
either.
The idea of like calling either of you cis would be fucking ridiculous. Like,
Right. But yeah, so I don't know. I just wanted to interject with that as just like I don't even think that defining cis as comfortable with your gender makes sense. If anything, is like I perceive it as your gender has remained aligned, or yeah, your gender has remained aligned with your sex, or the other way around, throughout your life, like fairly consistently. Trans, obviously not. Detrans, and then there's like a
mhm,
bunch of other categories that I can't name off at the top of my head that are specific for intersex individuals so that they also have language to describe whether
mhm.
or not they're at the relation with their assigned at birth sex and their gender and whether or not that's changed.
Exactly. So do we have to hand it to Max Robinson over
yeah.
here? Do we have to like give Max Robinson points? Do
Well,
we
to be
though?
honest, my note on
What do
on
we think?
my note in my Kindle on this particular sentence, because Max Robinson doesn't go really anywhere with this. My note on that says that's like good observation, but a crapstick could have made it. So like that's kind of it, right?
Ugh.
There are like two sections left, not two chapters, but like two sections of anything of meaning. One is
Mhm,
literally titled Feeling, and it is Max basically taking
mhm,
some random psychologist research about how the way we name our emotions informs how we perceive our emotions. And like that's not necessarily false in and of itself. I'm sure the research is lovely. And then Max says, well, why don't we name our dysphoria something else? If we didn't have dysphoria, the word for dysphoria, we wouldn't feel it, right? And Max makes this like argument that's like, well, if you didn't have the word for disgust, you would have to use other words to describe it, which would change your experience of it. And I'm like, that's all.
What? We're sapper warfing?
That's great,
Okay,
but for
sure.
some reason, Max, we are all still people, and for some reason, most cultures still have words that are more or less anger, happiness, disgust. Like for some reason, we still share them, even when we have no cultural exchange
Mhm.
whatsoever. So I feel like this total construction ad nihilo is a little bit too far. And then we arrive at the bit where Max chants for like several pages straight about how we should sit in a circle and unname our dysphoria as something else, and has this line that is just revelatory. Just says something like,
Mhm.
within detrans women's circles, many consider those that had mastectomies before detransitioning lucky, and then goes on to say how they perceive them as desirable. And that's like, well, why is that, Max? Because like
Uh,
I like my boobs, and like I mean I could have not, and I could have like been like, no, I'm detrans, but I still want a mastectomy. But why is that you're sitting in a circle and renaming your dysphoria to something else, while the people sitting in it are like, damn, I wish I'd chopped off my tits before I joined this cult?
oh, that fucking says it all, doesn't it?
One sentence, but
Oh
oh
my
my
god.
god, was it a sentence?
Okay, so Max Robinson is like sitting on the corner. She's sitting on the floor and she is like raising her hands up and she is praying to her lady Janice Raymond in the sky and being like, please give me the successful conversion therapy that will make me not want to be dysphoric
Yes.
anymore. And it's like, oh my god.
The call is coming from inside the house.
Yeah, and like just as an aside, you know the people I hate the most in like detrans circles, like detrans servers and whatnot? I hate the motherfuckers that are here like, how to stop dysphoria? I have been very good and I have re-identified with my birth sex, but dysphoria won't go away. Please tell me how to hypnotize myself. And I'm just like, I have compassion, but oh
There's
my
a really
god, go
obvious answer
fuck
there.
yourself. Leave.
Or come back, I'll do your testosterone shot for you. Come on.
You gotta keep that part in, honestly. But oh my god. I was gonna say earlier that like I don't think we should give Max any kudos for hitting upon that, cisgender isn't a real thing because like ultimately what Max is doing is like even though the observation that like cisgender is a bad formulation to think about trans issues is true, I feel like what Max Robinson is doing over here is basically being like, well, none of us are cisgender. All of us live with dysphoria, so we should all just like kind of just, but we can't really change our sex, so we should just kind of, be okay with it. But like, oh no, it's even worse than that. This book is an attempt at self-conversion therapy. It's a conversion therapy diary, isn't
Yeah,
it?
and like
Like at this
It's a
point.
cultist writings.
what really sucks here for detransition is that like, well, it's a really fraught thing, like, right? Although, like, when you're trans, you are not exactly rewarded for detransitioning purely because just the fact that you transitioned
Mm-hmm.
to begin with is such a dehumanizing act
Mm-hmm.
in the eyes of society that you will never be treated the same again. But still, there is constant push to essentially detransition you, not because you will be cis again, but because they want you to cease being evidence that sex can be changed. They want you to cease being trans. They don't care that you will not be cis again. They just want you to stop being trans. So in this environment, like sorting away a genuine desire to detransition and sorting it away from the brainworms is really difficult. And that's the thing. No one knows
Mm-hmm.
which people in the circle that was chanting to pray the dysphoria away would have really liked to detransition or not. I assume some of them did, right? And that's the thing. It kind of it
Mm-hmm.
ruins your relationship with your own autonomy in regards to your sex. You can't have it because it's all mired in dog shit. And it doesn't really even matter if you would have wanted to detransition or not, because, well, it's been shat upon. Sorry. Anyway, sorry to bring the mood down.
Yeah.
I'm about to bring it down even more.
No, that's yeah, no, because like I know what's left. The final hit in the classics lineup.
So, like, for a while in this book, Janice Raymond goes kind of unmentioned. She's mentioned sometimes to say how, oh, women have power from within, which we must recover, la 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 la. But like, not really with such a frequency as in the beginning, and you almost forget that she exists. But then, within the final chapters of this book, Max is like, well, queer people have said that Janice Raymond is bad, and she wrote this shitty book where they allege that she says that trans women rape women by existing. And then Max is like, well, when I was in trans circles, so-called trans women, open parenthesis, men, close parentheses, actually raped us a lot. And then just leaves that. And I like, and then,
Oh my
and then,
god.
I was like, are you gonna expand on that? Nope. We continue and we like yap about something else. And then we arrive at like what Max meant by that. And Max goes on this massive tirade about how the existence of lesbian trans women is an invasion by the males, basically by saying how they raped lesbians with their existence, and how the lesbian partners of lesbian trans women are brainwashed traitors. And it just goes on. And then Max says that, like, my partner and I had a perfectly good t-shirt selling business, but once we saw the truth of Janice Raymond's and spoke out against the invading male rapists, our business was ruined. People stopped buying our t-shirts and they didn't care that it was our only source of income. And they exiled us from our communities, even though a certain scammer still remains. And then she recounts the story of some random scammer in some queer commune somewhere in America that no one cares about. And we stopped selling our t-shirts and they behaved as if they lied about the trans women rapists. Even if we did like, open parentheses, which we did not, close parentheses, it would have been unconscionable to ruin a woman's business over such a thing. This just goes on.
86% of lesbians support trans women and trans people in general. What did she think was going to happen if she started spouting off transphobic stuff?
I
I'm
don't know.
in the lesbian circles.
I don't know.
I think she wanted to restart the second wave. She just wanted to be like, hello, I am great. I am your great second wave feminist Shiro, who is here to say the things that nobody else will.
Like a really, really sad, was it like was it feminist Jesus? Turf Jesus
Turf Jesus.
is returned.
When I say that, the deterioration of arguments, because like at first we're like citing a fuck ton of stuff. Like we're citing Raymond, citing Dworkin, which was really embarrassing because you could just cite the Dworkin, but whatever, and like doing all this shit. And then the end of the book is like, fuck it, you ruined my t-shirt business, even though there is still a scammer that I have beef with, and actually all women music festivals are cool. She like goes on for a bit about music festivals, which now that you told me that Hoagland was all about like living on the commune with the lesbian separatists, like I see the vision. I see the vision why there was just a random music festival segment.
This is like return to Mitch Fest. It's like at this point, like Robinson wants to like return to half a dozen things, and it's just like, okay, so you're really sad that you like missed most of the second wave, and I'm just like, can you just like deal with that in a slightly healthier way somehow? Clearly not, but
I just wanted to read you this paragraph, and a lot of the things in this book, I like
go ahead.
boomerangs, right? They're like, first, trans men can't be feminist, and you're like, why? And then 100 pages later, there's your answer, because I wasn't.
Okay.
Like, a lot of these things are boomerangs,
right?
Right. So like, same with like trans women sexually assaulted them. What? They assault them with their mere existence. Okay, sure. But this thing, when is mentioned...
Oh my god. Oh, it's the Sappho by... So it's... Okay, this is, again, vintage
Yes, it is Janice
Raymond.
Raymond.
We were assaulted by the fact that the trans woman was near us.
Yes.
Okay, great. I hate this. I hate this
But then
so
this
much.
thing, it's just there. It's
Okay,
one paragraph, and it's never mentioned again. So here it is. Quote, during my time in the trans community, I was on the fringes of a scene where a predatory trans woman, with a fetish for encouraging others to change their gender identity, convinced many who previously identified as FTM to instead understand themselves as women. As far as I could tell, this did not improve their lives in any way. It caused confusion and pain that could have been avoided had this predator not chosen to use them as playthings, and became entangled with other forms of coercive treatment inflicted on them. This action of calling yourself a woman does not inherently guarantee either clarity or meaningful solidarity. And that's just like...
You know something, Max? You know? you might have just written down an argument for why your stupid cult activities were bad.
I was gonna say, like, oh, so then we do have a trans woman who is, I'm just gonna say it bluntly, forcibly detransitioning trans men. Isn't that what you wanted, Max? Is that not what you wanted, for there to be more detrans women out there?
No, but you see,
Why aren't you hailing this?
when I
Okay.
detrans trans men, this is based and feminist and sister pilled. But when trans woman does it, bad.
Yeah. Oh, and then also like the whole, oh yeah, they weren't remarkably like happier with their situation. Yeah, I wonder why.
Honestly, I'm just gonna say it, Emma. When a trans woman, forcibly detransitioned you, that was pretty based and sister pilled and
It was
feminist.
based on
Okay,
sister film.
so I don't know what the hell Max is on about.
Okay. For the listener, because this is an inside joke. This is not an outside joke. Talia was the first person in like eons since the beginning of my transition that asked me like, "Hey, are you okay? What do you think about your gender?" And I was like, "I think nothing. Come back in another 5 to 10 business years." And then I came back like a few months later.
Hey, that's not how long it took.
That's
That's not. Yeah, that's not how long
that's
it
not
took.
how long it took. That's what I said. So here's the thing. Like, okay, this is funny if you take it at face level too. Like, first of all, presenting like, especially if you were in a trans community, presenting this as like a trend is really weird because forced detransition is so verboten in trans community that this would be like hell of a thing to do. But like, even taken on his face, it's funny because the whole book is like, please come forcibly detransition with me. But when a trans woman does it, that's bad. So it's funny. But also, considering how Max talks about trans women, I don't know that that's true. And she even says here that she was on the fringes of a scene, so she heard from a friend of a friend that this happened. So for all we know, this could have been a trans woman with her lesbian partner who is a detrans woman. As because Max thinks that lesbian partners of trans women are brainwashed traitors, maybe that isn't an interpretation that birthed. Who knows?
Just that's is that the book?
Well,
That's the
that is
book.
the book. There's one more chapter in it where, like, Max tries to make the case that transition is a Sado ritual, and Sado ritual is a term from Mary Daly's book where she, I think,
No, that's the book. No, we're done.
it's shit. It's shit.
Fucking
Like,
hate the Mary
Sado
Daly.
ritual is like a way, but that Mary Daly, I think, tried to categorize ritualistic abuses and violences towards women that would be considered unacceptable under any circumstances, but are made acceptable within ritual. Something like that.
Right.
Something
Sure.
like that. And then Max uses the previous points that she made throughout the book to say that transition is that, and this is like a mic drop, and I just don't give a shit. But to be honest, I skimmed that chapter because like, don't give a shit, don't give a shit.
It's at okay. Okay, so from the small amount of context I have, that like, so I guess Mary Daly would classify female genital mutilation
Yes.
as a Sado ritual, and then Matt
Mm.
Robinson is like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna call transition mutilation, like no one else before me ever has. Doing this in 2021 after Abigail Schreier's
Yes.
book comes out. Yeah, if this was presented as a mic drop moment, that like mic dropped with the sound of the wettest fart you have ever heard. 'Cause, okay, wow, so you're so brilliant, Max. You're only repeating the thing that every transphobe has ever said for the past 30 years. Good job.
And yeah, that's the book. Actually, fun quiz for you. Do you think that Max Robinson is a supporter of the rapid onset gender dysphoria theory?
That's actually interesting because it doesn't come from her like second wave
Nope.
goddesses, right? So
I'm gonna put my money on
I think
no.
Oh, interesting.
yeah, because I genuinely think that Max Robinson believes only what Janice Raymond allows her to believe. TBH.
You would be correct. Max Robinson directly states in this book that she hates the idea of, well, I don't think she hates, I think she just disagree. The idea of rapid onset gender dysphoria because this book, among other things, makes the claim that therapy is bad, psychiatry is bad, all of it, just don't do it anymore, diagnosis bad, which is really funny because I think Max, before all her life was a t-shirt business, apparently worked in like as a social worker for the developmentally disabled. So like again, I have written a whole essay about how psychiatry bad sometimes, especially under patriarchy, but Max takes this to new and heretofore unforeseen heights where like she's like, everything you get from psychiatry and therapy you should get out of your friends. And I know that's like a lot to ask. She literally says this basically, this is a lot of labor, but we simply must. And I was like, okay, And like she's really against the idea of self-improvement. She says self-improvement bad. Anyway, come
What?
self-improve with
What?
me at the
That's just
Detrans retreat. Trying to
working out?
no, like psychologically, like to
Oh, okay.
trying to pursue therapy is bad because therapy is
Just like
not
healing bad.
political, and you should do political. Uh, uh, uh,
If you think Max, if
No,
you think therapy is so bad, if you think therapy is so fucking bad, why do you worship the literal inventor? She conceptualized the idea of exploratory therapy. That like we should be encouraging trans people to explore their gender instead of giving them the fucking hormones they want. What do you mean you don't like therapy, Max? Your entire book is an endorsement for universal therapy.
well, she does say that that should
Uh,
be done, but then in a different chapter, that she says that therapy is just drugs against your political condition, and you should politically organize instead. Which, like, to be perfectly honest, like I got a lot of free therapy on NGO money because I was a queer child from an abusive home, and most people around me did
mhm.
political organizing to some extent, and almost all of them were in the same free therapy that I was.
is not to be like, I don't know, that one woke asshole, but is healing yourself emotionally and psychologically not a act of political resistance to arm yourself with love and care towards yourself in a world that is so cruel? Like, I don't understand how you cannot frame it as something that, because if everything is political, self-love is supposed to be political, right? It's like taking you're picking up what I'm putting
yeah,
down, right?
so
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
Max like points to essentially institutional weaponization and abuses of therapy. It points to, I believe, testimonies of like Black Americans that said that white therapists treated them as if they
Mhm.
should simply feel better about those individual exceptions where white people treat them bad sometimes, as opposed to understand structural racism. Like, yeah,
I have those critiques too, sure, but
yeah, but
uh,
at the same time,
continue.
being like self-improvement bad, simply politically organized. Like, look, political organizing is good, but you are still a creature of with a mind and a psychology that needs taken care of. And like in my experience, like my queer therapist didn't tell me that I simply made shit up and I simply should be happy about stuff, right? The purpose of it was to give
Mhm.
me tools to like deal with my feelings and my experiences and stop clawing at walls and screaming, which I think is helpful. Max also cannot maintain this because in a different section she says
Mm.
something like, at some point I called my detrans friend or like my feminist friend or something like that, and I said that I'm struggling with the ideas that transition is politically harmful and anti-feminist, and she said to me, no one needs another
Mhm.
female martyr. And Max says, well, yes. And then after that, I focused on what I really wanted, and that was detransition. So it's like, Max, so should we all politically detransition, or should we focus on what we really want? Do we need female martyrs, or do we not need female martyrs? Please pick one. You cannot argue for both of these things at the same time.
Can I end this on a note that is both sad and might commit the grave crime of making you have empathy for Max Robinson?
Okay, sure. It's a tall ask.
Max Robinson fundamentally is a person without a single thought that has originated in their own head. They are a person who fell into this detransition cult and has not been able to escape it, has not been able to escape the radicalization, and has not for even a single moment been able to heal from that, been able to get any therapy, any support, and has in fact been further radicalized into believing that the very idea of trying to heal, of trying to get away from these incredibly damaging ideologies that have defined her life is bad and poison and not feminist and not active. They are a perpetual victim in the sense that I think that they will be like trapped in the utterly like destructive, toxic black hole of a political project that Janice Raymond started. It's a really sad fucking existence. But
I mean,
holy shit, snap out of it.
it's the same attitude, like Emma said before, like holding space, compassion, whatever you want to call it, for conservative detransitioners.
Mm.
Like, yeah, you're in a bad place. At the same time, it's not good to proselytize these incredibly damaging like views that really do have an impact on the safety of trans people. So yeah, I do. I feel empathy for Max in a similar way that I feel empathy for people like Chloe Cole, Prisha, whoever, the cohort of like famous detransitioners. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I feel like
Yeah, like
compassion for Max in the same way that I feel like compassion for like a brain-wormy trans woman that yells at me that she's an HSTS homosexual transsexual and she will never pass and she's a gay man actually that just really
mm,
wants estrogen and like no one will ever believe I'm a woman anyway, so why would I say it? That kind of thing. Like, it is
Mm.
both incredibly toxic and harmful to everyone around her, including herself. But, like,
but she's in
yes.
pain. And like that's the sort of like really unfortunate thing about us sometimes, right? God, why are we saddled with all this empathy for these self-destructive yahoos who hate us and would like stab us if we tried to help? But I don't know. We just are, and like I still want to like I don't know if this will do anything, but like hurting other trans people is not going to fix you. I that is it. That is the only thing I can bring myself to say at this point. Hurting other trans people is not going to help you. Could you please realize that somehow? Would be nice.
And on that other note, this has been the transition beyond before and after. I didn't even
How
talk about what the title means, but honestly, it's stupid, so I'm not going to.
fuck the title. Fuck the
It's stupid. I can tell you like off the record, but it's dumb.
How do we keep like taking these super fun episodes? Like we would
This is not going to be a
last
fun
time we did this
episode.
one
What are
was
you
about
talking
Jack
about?
Halberstam's piss flute. Okay, we were like having a pretty good time talking about how ridiculous his book is, and then towards the end it's just like, oh god, just the endless cycle of vile.
First it starts off as a fun joke, and then the realization hits you of like there are
It
people out there who
yeah,
truly, sincerely believe this in their heart of hearts.
the post-analysis clarity. This has been Cracked Ivory.
Don't forget to take your depresso in the morning.
I was gonna say detransition not even once, and then I
Hey.
was like, wait, and then I was like, actually, wait, that would be the funniest thing to end with. Then I was like, oh shit, and then I got two in my head about it. I don't know, gender not even once. There we go.
I think it's based when trans women detransition their FTM friends.
I'm so glad we came out of this. All right, good night.
Cracked Ivory is supported by Patreon. Join us at patreon.com/crackedivorypod to receive early access to our episodes, as well as full Patreon exclusive episodes and behind-the-scenes content. Follow Talia Bhatt at taliabhatt.com and Emma Zacharuk at dolphindiaries.card.co for their solo feminist projects. Cracked Ivory is edited by Emma Zacharuk and produced by Talia Bhatt and Emma Zacharuk. All music is by Kevin MacLeod. Special thanks to our current Cum Laude's patrons: Lava Monster, White Mirror, Axon.dev, and Ceiling Fan. Thanks for listening.